Hello, and welcome to Leadership is a Philosophy, Not a Checklist, video discussion number 20 on the movie 12 O'Clock High from 1949. Now, this movie I have heard many people say many times, great leadership movie. When you go and watch it, and again, it's like every other thing. If somebody says it, maybe this is part of mentorship. If you say something's great and you give it to somebody and they read it or they watch it, I think that it's incumbent upon you to then go and talk to them about what you got out of it. Because I remember watching this and not being able to understand what made it so great. So again, as we're starting the new trend, here's our chart. So the personality traits, the talent, the ability to tune, competence, environmental hierarchies in pursuit of goals. Then the characteristics, positive or negative. And then these are 4 sources over history that have basically indicated that there are 4 leadership archetypes. So it's the Tao Te Ching is the green, Army Field Manual pink, German general, and the German general he's got 15 names in his 15 names, so I'm not going to say them all because I'll just butcher them. And then the archetypical model is the good character and the talent, and it comes out the same way. So once again, nothing that I'm doing is new. It's just what has been there before. So again, we're going to look at this chart and then go through and analyze the people. So let's start off. So at the beginning, this officer here is the commander of a wing, and they've lost some. This is a bomber wing during World War II. They've lost several planes. The morale isn't great. The performance of the squadron hasn't been very good, and they keep saying the thing hard luck and all this sort of stuff. This gentleman right here is the administrative officer. He's basically the personnel guy. So the thing that's interesting about this commander is that he's actually well loved by everybody. And he understands what's going on with his squadron. So let's go through and look at that. So then basically he gets relieved by the wing commander. I never understand Air Force structure. He gets fired by the big boss. And so when he gets fired, they send down Gregory Peck, who happens to be a general. The command's supposed to be for a colonel, but he sends down this guy that's a general. This gentleman here is the air executive, and we've talked about this before, he has all the credentials. So he's a West Pointer. He's got this perfect record. Everything about his record is perfect. Well, the first thing he did when the other commander got relieved is went out and got drunk. He didn't stick around and try to assume command or try to fix anything or try to change anything. He just went out and got hammered. So Gregory Peck is kind of dropping the hammer on this guy. Basically says he's going to give him a plane, and the plane is going to be called the Leper Colony, and it's going to have all the worst people, all the worst things, anything that's a mess. He's going to get that because his punishment for having all that skill and doing nothing with it is misery. So again, like I said, the first commander was well loved. This guy's not really liked at all because he comes in like a sledgehammer. He says, look, we're going to die and we got to fix these things and do all this sort of stuff, and comes in super disciplinarian, hard charging, does all this sort of stuff. And then this is just an example here where they go out and do submissions. You see everybody's face. They go out and do submissions, and there's a failure of navigation. And so this is the guy that was the air executive, and he goes, hey, you lost your navigator. You now get this guy because he's the dirtbag. I mean, it's a method. And so what ends up happening is all these officers decide that they're on a mutiny. They're just going to leave. They want to transfer out. They don't like any of it. And the personnel officer, who sort of understands Gregory Peck's character, says, hey, we'll try to hold some things. So then, because he's being so hard, this is the old commander who's now working up at headquarters. He comes in and says, hey, you're being too much of a hard nose. You're being too much of a tool. You need to be able to mentor and guide them as well. He says, no, I don't buy it. I'm doing it my way, blah, 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 blah. All right, so this is the point, right? This is the question that I run into. So if this is supposed to be such a great leadership movie, I'm not sure that I understand what's so great, because he's treating his people like garbage and doesn't let up, right? We've talked about this before. You might have to come in and the organization's completely disheveled. Everything's a mess. Nobody's doing anything to standards. You might have to be not necessarily a strict authoritarian, but you might have to come in and say, here's the way we're doing stuff. Go. But then once it's to where you want, you got to let up, right? You can't just keep being a complete tyrant. It's like, well, now everything's working. Cool. I tell people all the time, you earn the way I'm going to behave. If you're doing everything the right way, I'm not going to do anything. You're doing everything a mess, we might have to have a thing. So he says, hey, look, you came and told me and I didn't listen. Now I'm telling you and you're not listening. So we'll see how this happens. Well, they start having success because they're being done through discipline, but he still isn't communicating with his people. So then he sort of commits the same thing that happens with the officer at the beginning. He sort of was too close to his people. He becomes so tied to the success of the unit, he freaks out because he starts having too much stress and gets pulled out of the mission and then sits there catatonic while the mission happens. And then he comes out of it when they land. So let's go through some of the analysis of it. So it's a great movie to talk about different leadership aspects, but the messages are mixed. Which person are you supposed to emulate? Right? I'm always looking, if you're going to tell me it's a great movie, it's either something I should look at or something I should not do. So the old commander had the talent, but he wasn't paying attention. He didn't, yes, you have to be close to your people. Yes, empathetic. Yes, you have, but then you have to be humble enough and have the vigilance to step back and go, what's happening? What is this a symptom of? What's really going on? And he wasn't doing that. So the new commander comes in, no humility or empathy. He's like, we're going to die. If we don't fix this, people are going to die, blah, 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 blah. Get out. And just complete sledgehammer. And then, like I said, he doesn't let up. And I'm not saying that as a leader you have to be soft, but it's like being a tyrant all the time is not correct. There's the whole spectrum, right? There's the bell curve. So all of your activity should be in the middle. Super soft and super hard should be rare. But I think that's normal. I think everybody knows that. It's just that these guys were sort of set in their style. And then he also, Gregory Peck's character, came in and he wanted to win. And he wanted to save people's lives. And he wanted to do all these things, but he didn't communicate it at all in the movie. He didn't go and say, look, we're doing this because this is going to save your life. We're going to do this because we have to do this because of that thing. Here's why we're doing this. Here's why the standard exists. Here's what you need. We've talked about it before because Nietzsche said, he who has a why can bear any how. As long as you understand why you're doing something, you'll do it. But if it's just arbitrary because somebody's going to be sitting there pointing and yelling, although there is a time for that. So the leper colony idea was interesting, but I kind of didn't like it either. Because what does this officer do? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I remember what it was. I'm sorry. So the leper colony officer goes out on the first day with his plane with his new crew of all of the worst people. This would be me. This is what I would do. I would say, hey, guess what? I kind of made a mistake, and so I've been given this, and you are all sent here because you're the worst, so everybody expects the worst of us. So here's what we need to do. Let's talk about some things real quick. Let's find out who's got what skills, and we need to prove all of these people wrong. Rather than just sitting here being mopey and grumpy, we need to prove these people wrong. We need to be the best. Because that's what leadership is you take the people that you lead everybody. You fix everybody that wants to be fixed, right? And so his first thing in the movie is, all right, I got put here because you guys stink and we're not going to fail. And if you guys fail, blah, blah, blah. And so he's just being terrible too. He was a terrible leader. So then there's a part in the movie where Gregory Peck's character is just criticizing missions. Hey, we did this on the missions and this was terrible and this was terrible, and then leaves the room. And then the next series, this was terrible, and leaves the room. Nobody's going to grow that way. Because what happens? You walk in the room and everybody's just sitting there being grouchy because they know they're going to get yelled at, nothing else. It's not good leadership. So they both had the talent and they both had good character. They were good people, but they missed the ideal characteristics. In other words, how do they present themselves to the organization? So the ideal is the blend of both, like we talked about. There's no set style. Your style has to change based off of the conditions. You can't just do the same thing all the time. If people need you to be in their knickers, then go do that. And if they don't, then don't. And if they need lots of praise, then you got to praise them. Maybe you do something where you're letting people just enough fail just enough, or you make just enough mistakes. You never know. So very interesting movie. But once again, once you have that chart and go look at it, suddenly you say, oh, here's where these leaders fall. Here's where they fall in this thing. Here's where they're missing. Here's what is missing about this scenario. And that's it. 12 O'Clock High, Gregory Peck. This is when the thing came out, but 1949 is when this movie came out. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. Oh, once again, not sponsored. Of course, the movie's 70 years old, so nobody's going to care. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a great day.